Boom. What's up, everybody? Hey, this is John Kitchens. This episode 62 of Expert Mentors Live. I am super excited for today's episode. We've got Mr. Albie Stasek and special guest, Mr. Matt Milia is joining us, and we're going to talk great ISA versus average ISA. Answer some questions from the Q&A and chat. So if you guys got questions, throw them in there. And I'm sure we'll venture off and dive into other things. So fellas, say hello to the Honey Badger Nation.
What's up, Honey Badger Nation?
What's up, everybody?
So
Matty,
did I hear you? Did you say episode 62?
62.
Holy Moses. That gave me a little bit of chills. I have to be honest with you. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
I love
It's
it.
pretty cool. And man, we've got a stellar lineup coming everybody's way over the next few weeks. We've got Veronica Figueroa is going to be joining us. We've got Mark Z. Finally, I've got Mark Z wrestled in. Been working on Mark for about 6 months, so finally got him to commit. And we definitely Gil Ramos. We've got the crew from Orlando going to be lining up. So the next 6 weeks are going to be on fire. So we're super excited.
That's great, man.
Cool. So let's dive in. I know, we want to hit this topic. I know we've got Matt on here to add some context and some color. So I'll let you kind of dive in and give everybody the framework of for today's episode.
Well, for me, and I'm really just going to kind of set the table for Matt because, Matt, in looking back, Matt really, was the best ISA that I had ever hired. And obviously then that turned into a business partnership, which we'll get into a bit later. But I guess this goes all the way back to the first exposure that I really had with Jay Kinder, which was somehow I got on Jay and Mike's marketing list. Like I'm sure many of you who are listening to this are as well, or have been in the past. And whoops. All right, we're back. Sorry
Gotcha.
about that. And one of the headlines, which, great hook, how to set 72 listing appointments in 1 month. I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch this, correct? And so obviously the caveat to not just having an inside salesperson that was setting these listing appointments up, he obviously had a strong inbound flow of leads coming in that she was working that was not done on an outbound only. But it got me enough to listen. And I literally ran an ad in Craigslist and hired my first ISA like within 2 weeks of watching that video. So really it kind of came from this is when you were running his company down there in Lawton, John. The idea of having somebody and leveraging someone who really just specializes in the inside part of the sales process to get me out face to face in front of more and more people. That was the goal. And I knew just by pure math that if I could get face to face with more agents, not only could I afford to pay an inside salesperson, but I would ultimately grow my business and I would bring more money to the bottom line. The bet was spot on. The first ISA I hired, she didn't really work out that good. She was really, really good at getting me in the door. And I think we can kind of get into this, we can share all kinds of stories, but
I got lots of ISA stories. We could go on for days.
Her name was Desiree, and this girl, she could sell ice to an Eskimo and was literally working for a mortgage broker at the time, setting up refis. And she was able to get people that did not know her to give them their social security number over the phone. So I'm like, well, if you were able to do that for my buddy Hesh Sagafi at the time, is who she used to work from, I go, setting me up on a listing appointment for sale by owner is going to be cake. And it turns out it was. And that's kind of was like the launch of me utilizing, leveraging an ISA to start growing my business. If I had to point to one thing, and the one thing couldn't be the coaching that I got from Kinder Reese and everyone there, including you, Mike, Jay, Cliff Freeman. If I only had to point at one other thing, it was putting an ISA into my business and into my model and launching my business. It literally launched from that point forward. So it's a big deal to nail this hire if you're interested in growing your business.
100%. And, from a hierarchy standpoint, our take has always been, you get that rock solid, administrative person in place to create that leverage so you can focus on sales activities. But soon as you've got money, and we always say core capital, meaning you've got 2 months of whatever it cost you to operate, and you pull the trigger. I mean, as soon as you hit that money mark, man, we're firing those ads. We're going through that hiring process immediately.
Right.
That's just how much we believe in that position. Yeah,
and a lady by the name of Maria Quattrone, I think that's how you say her last name.
Yep.
She's a great agent. I think somewhere in the Jersey or Philly area, actually.
Yeah, I think she's in Philly.
She used to be a member of Kendra Reese, actually. She called me the other day to pick my brain about ISA. She had just hired one, and she was like, I don't know if I should be happy with these results or whatever. But the long story short of it, why I bring her up in that conversation, she asked me a really good question. And Matt, this is an interesting one that I never was asked, actually. And she asked me a question. She said, what is the average lifespan of a good ISA? Like how long can I expect them to stay with me? Because she has a really, really good one, actually. And, like, what are the metrics behind what does success look like for an ISA on a daily basis? And I want to let Matt touch on a lot of that stuff. In general, if you have an in-house ISA, Matt was setting on an average of probably 2 to 3 appointments a day. 2 of those would usually keep on average, but there was a lot of inbound there too. Outbound, it's a little bit harder if they're just calling for sale by owner and expired stuff. It made me, her question about how long made me start thinking about it. And Matt, I think he was with Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. Were you calling for me for about 2 years before we started Appointments Today?
Yeah, it was about a little over 2 years, a little over
2 years. And then, it was time for another opportunity for you. And we started Appointments Today, which is an online, really it's a call center, a virtual call center for ISAs, which is what Matt runs now. And the same was true for Wayne. So if I pointed at my top 2 ISAs ever that I hired, and I hired a lot, I have to point at Matt and I pointed at Wayne. Now Wayne's a full-time real estate agent, successful here with us at EXP at this point. So, I think that in reality, it would be unrealistic to think that when you do find a good ISA, that they're going to stay forever. I think you have to be okay with the fact that if you do get someone who's good, odds are they're going to want more opportunity down the line. And I think that you should kind of go in there with that expectation. And I didn't with Matt. The whole idea of starting that company was literally like a crazy whim of an idea, based upon trying to get more output of our inside sales department, because it was just Matt. And so we went out and found 2 other ISAs that we wanted to hire for our team, but we only needed one. So we hired both of them and we trained both of them. Matt actually trained both of them. And then we hooked up a couple of our coaching clients. One was Robbie Barreau and another guy out of California with the other ISA. So that's kind of how Appointments Today was born. But so I think that the most value out of this call is going to be Matt, I think, breaking down maybe the characteristics that you've looked for, Matt, when you've hired. There's nobody that I know on the planet that's hired more ISAs than Matt Milia. And so he set up the funnel, from the top of the funnel all the way down to the middle. He's automated the process of even them taking a test. I think that this audience is going to get a ton of awesome value out of what you built, because it was amazing and I had nothing to do with it. I can't take credit for that. That's all Matt. And so, yeah, man, I actually am in a recruiting meeting right on the other side of this wall here. And I'm going to have to hop off. But was there anything else, John, that you?
No, that's fantastic, brother. No, I absolutely 100%, man. I appreciate you, stepping out and really setting up this call, because it was really going to be valuable. I've got a ton of questions for Matt. And so we're definitely going to work through and really unpack on the ISA side and give everybody, absolute clarity on what is a great ISA and really get clear on kind of managing their own expectations with that position and some key things to look out for and know. So, brother, I appreciate you. Go crush it. And anybody,
happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy 4th, brother. I'll talk
weekend.
to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Al. You too, man. Happy 4th.
Yep.
Hey Matt, I want to, I want to just kind of point out something real quick, and then we'll definitely slide in there. Matt, Al said something of, just what we're talking is a life expectancy kind of, right? Kind of understanding.
Yep.
And thinking career, kind of that career visioning for them. And
Right.
and so for me, one other key thing that made when Al was talking there that I was thinking about was, man, it's the same for real estate agents, right? It's the same for agents that come on board. And if, the number one fundamental flaw in the team real estate model is that you lose talent out the top. That's why we love EXP. It gives them an ascension path to get off the team and really focus on just being in the downline. Focus on what do we got to do to become an icon agent. And so it just made me think that, man, it's not just ISAs. Although there is a life expectancy on ISAs. Just through my experience over dealing with ISAs for the last 15 years. So what I see, I see that, but it also applies to your team. So I think the whole principle is that we should be thinking about that not only for ISAs, our agents, but every person that's on our team, really getting clear what is it that they want to accomplish, what are their goals, what's out there for them, and help them create that career path, I think is key. So I just wanted to point that out. I was ringing through my head when Al was talking about that. So unpack for people here, man, let's get clear. What the heck is an ISA? I want, there's misconceptions. People have different things. I have my belief on it. What the hell is an ISA?
That's a great question. So going back to the lifespan, because this is something we've studied. The perfect scenario is about 18 to 24 months is what I've seen. And that's absolute perfect scenario where they're making really good money. You're paying them a good base. They're also getting bonuses. 18 to 24 months. It's what I've seen with average lifespan. I've seen it less than that, of course, but it's usually the average. As far as what an ISA is, inside sales associate, they are essentially going to be the opening for your company. It's going to be the first person that's going to welcome people into the door. It's going to be the first person that's going to be that accurate depiction of when you think of yourself as an organization and what you want to look like. These are the people that you want to be representing you in the best possible spotlight. So an inside sales associate is someone who literally is someone you want mirroring and matching who you are, so that they can literally portray you as this amazing company. And then of course in the most basic sense, they're a hype man. They're hyping you up. They're getting people excited. They're selling the sizzle. They're telling people how great you are. Because, hey, John, you could say how great you are, but if someone else comes out, which was cool that Al did that. Al came out and said, oh, Matt's great. I mean, you got to have a hype man. So you have someone that's hyping you up, somebody that's literally saying how great you are, how amazing you are, how you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And I mean, that's really what that person is. They are the first part of growing your company from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. They really are, right? They're the first contact. They're the relationship builder. And so for us, right. And obviously this is where Al got it, ended up, you were sitting in that seat and really starting to, I think, unpack certain functions within that function, meaning, there's, just the one that's just making the calls, bubbling up opportunities. And then you got the closer. So for us, we took it a little bit further and it really, what was really powerful for us that created the most leverage. And this is how we still have it set up in the Lawton office today, is that they are essentially the gatekeeper for that principal listing agent. So, just give context for everybody that's tuning in, Al being, the primary listing agent, to where all company generated opportunities go through him. You are the gatekeeper gatekeeper, just while it was just you, you're the funnel, right? Everything funnels through you. You're the gatekeeper. You're the responsible one to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, that, everything gets nurtured. You, like what I mean by gatekeeper, you're the gatekeeper of his calendar. And what it does, what happens is that it creates a predictable process, because what happens is that there's, us agents or whatever, we're out in the field, we're talking to people and they're like, hey man, hey Matt, man, I'm ready to list my house. Let's set something up. And so like most agents are like, cool, man, I'll take care of it. Hey, I'll give you a call. What the right thing to do is say, you know what, man, that's fantastic. I can't wait. I'll have Matt, my associate at the office, to give you a call and get it set up. Because what happens is that you follow the process. Us as the listing agents, we have the best of intentions, but we don't follow the process. So that's why you want to have that in place. So when you call, that the particular, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're going to set the appointment, then you're going to qualify the appointment, right? So we can get into that in the importance of the seller counseling interview and going through and qualifying the appointment, running the process the right way, and, making sure that we're not skipping any steps. So that's kind of that was always my 2 cents on because that was just our experience with the ISAs. They were almost an executive assistant to that listing agent, right?
And I think a lot of it too is that, when you're a leader, you work for everyone. No one actually works for you. And that's where I think the biggest mistake that a lot of agents, and, the difference between an average ISA and a great ISA is really the system that they're put into. And I was great on the phone, but at the same time, it was a system that was built out that supported that greatness, so to speak, that actually helped bring it out. Because when you don't have the right system in place, I'll give you a great example. And this is something that even Al had struggles with. A lot of times he'd hire people that weren't necessarily intrinsically motivated. They had external motivating factors, whatever they were. Those external motivating factors, if someone wasn't there constantly looking over their shoulder saying, are you making your calls? Are you doing what you need to do? And get the results out of them. And Al was too busy running the appointments, so he wasn't there to watch the people. When we put Joel into the position of that sales manager, and then you have Joel there as that person that's kind of the buffer between the leader, the agent, who's out there, basically the salesperson of the organization who's out there doing the outbound sales. You got the person that's handling almost the communication and the facilitation process between the listing agent and the inside sales agent. You have to have that buffer, that person in between, so that somebody can hold the inside sales agent accountable. Because if you don't, it ends up being absolute chaos. And then you don't hit your marks, you don't hit your numbers, or there's not even an expectation, where it's an expectation, but there's no agreement that's written out that says what does success look like.
That's 100% spot on. And we'll dive into more greatness. I want to back up for a second. I thought of something that ties to life expectancy. If we know there's going to be a life expectancy, what would we say that would be the most important process to have in our business? It would be the hiring process, right? And you're going to have to rehire for this position. It's just a matter of time. So you better have that hiring process dialed in. And to me, I can make an argument that is the number one process you need to have in your business, is the hiring process. So having that in place, you're going to have to rehire for it. Either they're going to transition out, go somewhere else, or they're going to ascend. They're going to become an agent. They're going to leave, or you're going to create an opportunity like Al did with you, right? When you have a great ISA, you have to start thinking of other opportunities. And so, I just wanted to point that out. Make sure that you guys have that hiring process in place. Okay. So let's define some more characteristics. What makes a great ISA? We know that the system that they're plugged into is key. We know that there has to be accountability to the agreement You need a solid agreement in place. You got to have accountability to that agreement. But what else? Let's really throw everything out on the table that you look at like, that's an okay ISA, or like, damn, that is like, man, I wish I had 15 of mats over here. What does that look like?
So, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, great ISAs, and it's funny because so many people, there's a difference of opinions on it, but great ISAs are created. They're not born. So just because someone maybe is good at sales, or maybe they're good at persuasion, or whatever the case may be, they have to constantly have that obsession with wanting to get better, wanting to become more. It's funny because I've actually dreamed of running a call center. I mean, which is really, not many people can say, I want to run a call center. But when I worked in mortgage, when I first started, I was telemarketing back in 2004. And I'll never forget, because the first day I walked in there, I mean, I was scared to death. I never jumped on the phone before. I was working on cars. So literally I was turning wrenches for a living, had no clue what I was doing. And, this woman, like, I'm sitting there, I almost walked out, and this woman's like, hey, just give them hell. Don't worry about it. Like, be yourself, relax. It's all good. I started making the calls, and all of a sudden I started to find, wow, people are talking to me. This is great. So, and then from that day on, I'm like, wow, it'd be great to be in that guy's seat where I can be running this call center. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But at the same time, I mean, because it's like everything else. You don't know what all goes into that. But I will say this. The people that are the best at this are the ones that they want more. They want to go into leadership. They want to become an account manager. They want to become head of operations. Like, the people that I've had that are the best usually want to strive more than just that inside sales rep position, because in most cases they're doing that because they know they're good at talking on the phone. They know they're good at convincing and persuading, but they may want to go one step further. And that could be your sales manager. If they do a great enough job, you can bring that person as your sales manager to groom your next inside sales rep.
100%.
Not everyone's going to want to start an inside sales, company.
No.
I mean, but there's that option.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely different opportunities for them. And I mean, for me, before EXP, so the funny thing about this, and this was just one of those things where I don't know how I thought about it. It was something that Al and I kicked back and forth, and something that we've done to help with retention is for every single time that one of my guys, so I don't do any actual, like, I don't drop ads in LinkedIn. I don't drop ads in Craigslist. I don't run Facebook ads for inside sales reps. What I do is I take the reps that are on my team. I say, listen, for every single person that you bring on, I have them run ads. They'll do all the work, trying to basically qualify and make sure that they're good. And then, of course, we will have our sales managers will have the final say as to who gets into the company. But when that all happens, we literally go through with them a process where if you bring that person in, you get $1 for every hour that person works. So we almost created our own little revenue downline type of thing throughout the org. My top paid guy's getting, I think he's got like 16 or 17 people that he's brought in that he's making $16, $17 an hour passively just by bringing people in and recruiting and helping run the ads and bringing people in under his name. So that's actually helped me. That's really helped me maintain and retain those ISAs, because some of those guys now are going with me. They've been working with me for over 3 years.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I love that. Creating additional opportunity and talking from a growth standpoint, and creating those opportunities for leaders and encouraging growth. Given that's not, we might circle back to that. I made a note of that. So that's, we might talk from compensation standpoint. At what point, do you look to within, you're running, it's a different animal of what you're talking about versus, the people that are tuning in, growing within their organization. At what point do you guys look at, okay, hey, we're good. We need to bring another ISA. At what point does it mean to kind of make that scale, that jump? We tried it a couple times in Lawton. We had 2 and we really couldn't, get the return out of 2, and we tried anything and everything. So at what point do you guys look at saying, hey, it makes sense to get somebody else in here as well?
A great question. So I think for For every 5 million, because that's pretty much my standard number. Like if we were running ads or we are even bringing people in, I won't take anyone on that's doing under 5 million in volume. And the reason why that is because if you're typically doing under that, that means you need to close a deal more than I need that ISA to work. You've gotten to that point where you are, I hate to use the word desperation, but, and again, obviously closer to that 5 million mark, you're a little bit more patient with the process, but patience is obviously a really, really big part of it. And knowing that when you're at that 5 million mark, you have some cash flow to invest in your leads, to invest in an ISA. And then I would say once you get to about 10 million, well, I'd say once you get to 10 to 12 million or above, and you're doing that on your own, that's when you can start, okay, let's grow another ISA into the role. And you also got to make sure that you're getting at the bare minimum a 3 to 4x return on investment on the guy that you've already hired. Because if you're not, it's going to be pretty challenging to justify that additional expense.
Yeah, I think you would have to look at that. Obviously, lead with revenue in that position, making sure you're getting the ROI out of that piece for sure. Mm-hmm. Before you're making the only thing that I think you could make a really good argument for is if you've got a great ISA, you've got them running full throttle. Maybe let them groom another ISA in a maybe a part-time capacity to get full coverage. They're to where you've got additional coverage to where they're not on call 24/7. You give them a little bit of
right.
A little bit of recovery time back in their life, and you get a little additional coverage through the weekend and later in the evenings when you're kind of fluctuating that schedule around. So
I did, John. That was me, man. That was all. Each one guy, but 60 to 70 hours a week. Yeah, they get that 18 to 24 months actually goes down to probably 8 months to 7 months if you got them working 60 to 70 hours every week.
Right.
Because they get burned. They definitely get. So yeah, you have a really good point. And what I would even look at is at that point, is that person comfortable enough maybe going on more of a bonus commission type structure opposed to getting that base, the person that's been there for a while that, and at that point you can maybe even incentivize them a little bit more based on, hey, if that ISA closes X amount of deals that you train, you'll get a small percentage of that back, and constantly and consistently creating that opportunity to create more revenue for that initial ISA that you had. So you got a team of awesome closers.
When do you, and just kind of bouncing around here, but the thing that you see when an ISA starts to become profitable, what is that time frame, and when do you look at like, man, they're just not getting it, we need to look at getting somebody else? And also at what point do you this just kind of add some context, just when do you see the diminishing to where the life expectancy is, you see like, yeah, they've fizzled, I've either burnt them out, something's gone on in their life, and at what point do you need to really to have that hard conversation to transition them out and bring somebody else in? So I guess that's kind of twofold. When should you start to see an immediate return, and then when do you see, man, they're done?
So, and yeah, I mean, with ISAs, I definitely don't. There's never really that. I'd love to say there's always an immediate return because everybody'd have an ISA, but it does take time. I'd probably say the cash conversion cycle on an ISA is probably more between 4 to 6 months. If you're in a really good marketplace where you get somebody on the phone, average days on the market's 30 days, houses are selling for 98 or 99% of your listing price and they're gone almost immediately, sure, you can make your money back relatively quickly. But I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that, number one, do you have at the very bare minimum 5 to 6 months of core capital set aside that you can pay for this person, and it's not going to cause you to close your doors? Because a lot of times what happens is people hire an ISA, they think it's the golden goose, that one thing that will save their business or get their business to the next level. But what they've realized is that they didn't have enough leads. They didn't have an infrastructure in place. They didn't have training in place. So there's so many different variables that have to be aligned. But in the most simplest, it's about 6 months to get that return where you start to see they've closed some deals and you're starting to actually make some money back from them. And then I would say that as far as when you can tell somebody's just basically done, a lot of it's twofold. Number one is behavior. Do they show up every single day? Something that I tell my guys, I will 100% invest more time, effort, and energy into someone that shows up every day and really puts their best foot forward, but maybe they just don't have it dialed in yet, but they're willing to go above and beyond. The person that's the clock watcher where, hey, it's 5 o'clock and all of a sudden their computer shut down at 4:45 and they're sitting there waiting at the door ready to go. It's like, those are the people that they shouldn't be there. You want somebody that's going to be bought in, someone that's going to be not watching the clock, and someone that's going to be there really looking to continuously add value. But when you start to see those behaviors where they start missing work a little bit more often, maybe they have a little more excuses, or they're not taking ownership, or they're not taking accountability, that's when you really need to say, okay, maybe we need to look at some other opportunities for, either this person becoming a real estate agent or this person just goes altogether. And that's really a big part of it. So there's a lot of nuances in there, so to speak.
Sure. I think one of the biggest processes missing from a lot of, folks, small business and their real estate business is that they don't have, the exit. When do you transition somebody out, right? When do you free up their future to go do something else? So that's a critical piece to have in there. And you start to see, I agree with you. You start to see a lot of core value misalignments and things. And usually that's an indicator. And what happens is that, we get frustrated as the owner with them, but we also have to understand, put yourself in their shoes. They're frustrated, right? They just don't enjoy it. They're not happy. This is not what they want to do anymore. And so you have to, from a leadership perspective, that's why the leadership one-on-ones, that's why connecting with them at a high level. And I definitely want to talk about rhythm in the monthly, weekly rhythm with you here in just a second. But if you're missing your one-on-ones, if you're missing the daily huddles, if you don't have the end of the day reports, if you don't have a good vibe, a good pulse, a good rhythm with your ISA, then this is going to happen. I mean, they're going to do that. Most of the ISAs I know, brother, and you can attest, man, they got a wee bit of crazy up in them. And so, you got to be careful, right? You got to watch, you got to know the warning signs, and you got to know how to really, lead going through with them.
I think we're all slightly crazy. I think just where some of us are a little better at masking it. That's all it is, and really repurposing and manifesting it to do something good, opposed to doing something destructive. Another story for another day. No, I'm glad you brought up too the meetings, and I just want to give a real life example here. Actually, somebody in this group, I'm working with a woman in this group is phenomenal, and she's a honey badger. But the funny thing about her, what situation she had, she brought this gal in from, she was a broker in Colorado. So, I mean, think about it. It's a broker, right? You're thinking, okay, this is going to be an awesome ISA. I mean, they're probably going to know the ins and outs of the business. No big deal. She moved to Hawaii, and then she started making calls for her. And I told her, I said, listen, I said, look, you know what? I just want to help you. I don't really, like, if we don't work together, that's fine. I just want to help you with this situation. Can I give you some tips, some tricks, some ways that you can help grow? Oh, and by the way, are you okay with me talking to this gal and just kind of seeing it? Because maybe what I can do, if this girl's looking for some extra hours or maybe some extra income, I can actually put her on my team. I'll test her. I'll have her go through the whole process, and I'll see if I would hire her. I got off the phone with this girl, and I had to call her back, and I said, hey, I just want to let you know this person is not coachable. They're not open to constructive feedback. She found out that I was a company. I told her I was going to match the money that she was getting paid by this agent, which was good money. Said, I'm going to match that money. I'm going to make sure that you get paid the same, but I want you to log into Time Doctor every day. I want to see what your activities are every single day. Oh, absolutely not. I will not do that. Okay, no problem. So at that point, I went back to her and said, hey, I just want to let you know this person's not open to being held accountable. you may want to rethink that. And 3 weeks later, she called me back and said, let's get rolling with your company. I had to get rid of that girl. So it's the proof is in the pudding. It's one of those things where you have to have a system in place for accountability. And if you don't, it's tough. It really can blow back on you.
I think it's a great point. In-house has always been our go-to. I feel the virtual, this is just my experience, from a virtual aspect is a transition from nothing to bringing it in-house until you have, the ability, you've got the right training, you understand the right rhythm. And so it's a great bridge. I think it's a great bridge. I think I think it could be a good addition too. But if you do allow them to work virtual, I love, some of those tools like you were talking about to have, to where you can monitor actual time. That was a big get for us with the call center in Dallas. And, we brought everybody in on salary, and we got to looking at it, and we were like, man, they ain't working a full 40 what they're getting paid for. So we switched it over to hourly. And, when you've got 12 ISAs working for you in Dallas, Texas, where 10 of them are working maybe 35 to 36 hours, getting paid 40, do the math, right? Just the total savings there from a financial aspect. So it's just being smart from a business perspective and really, really looking at it in that regard. But that give us some ideal context, makeup, background. What do you look for in a really good ISA? Kind of, is there a specific age, demographic? Like if you could make up the ideal ISA, who is this person?
Great question. And I mean, I will say, definitely ISAs come from all different walks of life. If I were to create my perfect avatar, it would probably be someone who either has children that are grown or at the very least are old enough to be somewhat self-sufficient, because, what I found is that in a lot of cases, if somebody is, just had newborn or someone else come into the family, it's very difficult for them to have a quiet environment. Again, if they're working from home, if they're at the office, it's a different story. But as far as the typical ideal person, I'd say probably someone that's in their, I'd say 30s, early 30s, and really all the way up to like somebody that's even in, like my best caller is 71 years old, which I know when I tell people that, it sounds absolutely outlandish. But they are 70, 71 years old, amazing on the phone, has the greatest voice ever. But a lot of times what I'm looking for is, number one, voice. If they have a terrible voice or they have that annoying high squeak pitched voice, however you do it, they're either going to change their voice, which is not likely, or there needs to be something there to help with that tonality, the way they deliver their message. And somebody who has either been in the finance sector, maybe they've worked in real estate at one point or another, property management, maybe they've worked in mortgage and they were a loan officer, title work. There's so many different elements to it, or they've done some sort of like alarm sales. Guys are great, by the way. I've discovered that people that are selling the alarms, people that are doing the biggest one, believe it or not, is it's called Wyndham. I don't know if you've heard of Wyndham, but like it's a travel thing where people go and they go do timeshares. So anyone that's selling timeshares, but people that are really comfortable in their own skin, somebody that is, and somebody really that's extremely motivated. And probably the most important thing I would say is do not hire somebody who's already very wealthy. I've learned the hard way that if you hire somebody that already is doing very well financially, in most cases, they don't stay around for long. And it's, I think it's just a matter of motivation, because getting up every day, getting told no hundreds of times and getting that one yes, it is tough for a lot of people. And it can be a real ego, it can be a real hit to someone's ego.
Right. Absolutely. When they, they have that belief that, man, I don't have to do this. Right. And so, are you looking for anybody that has any like outbound phone sales experience, or is that not a indicator for?
No. I'm glad you asked me to dig a little deeper there, because that is really important that they do have some sort of experience making calls prior to working with you. I mean, if they don't have any outbound experience or cold calling, even more so, if they don't have cold calling experience, it's going to be really tough to train them in that mindset of constant and consistent rejection means that you're just one step closer to becoming an elite performer. But a lot of times it's tough for them to see that.
Man, we had this awesome kid here in Dallas, and man, he was one of the top salesmen at Nordstrom's, selling suits at Nordstrom's. He was legit, and wanted to get into real estate. We had a position there on the phones, and man, it didn't carry over for him, right? It just didn't translate over for him, and he ended up going back to Nordstrom's and doing really, really well. And so, I think that was one of the things that we uncovered, is that just because they have great face-to-face sales doesn't mean that that's going to, carry over for them over on the phones.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, in a lot of cases too, it's always really awkward because like anyone, that you have a family member, like my father will always ask me, hey, are you hiring? I could help you do this. I'm like, no, you're outbound sales. I'll help you find outbounds, because he was always amazing at outbound sales. But sometimes you just don't want that. Sometimes people think of their desk as a constraint, or they look at it as a like you're being held down. And if you're an outbound salesperson, in most cases, you're usually geared more towards that and a little less towards that commitment of sitting there every single day and really just being consistent, dialing for a few hours without necessarily having that human interaction. And a lot of times I feel like people that are outbound salespeople need that human interaction. The biggest mistake that a lot of agents make with ISAs, and I mean, I know a lot of people that do it and they do it successfully, but I would say that if you hire an agent with the mindset knowing that this person's going to be dialing for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they're going to be your long-term ISA solution, you should be running ads immediately, because that person's not going to be able to do it for very long. It's just a totally different mentality.
That's a great point. I think too, we talk a lot about the disc profile, the disc makeup.
Yeah.
I honestly believe anybody can do anything, and a high C could come in and crush it as an ISA. It's not sustainable. Yeah. It's not going to last, right? Because that just burns the energy at the wrong level. And so, we even see, we get a little nervous with our high I's coming in on the ISA front, the people that are really love to connect and talk with people. And I think you nailed it right there. We got to get a game plan in place to try to transition them into outside sales as fast as we can, because they're the ones, man. We've had some high I's that were ISAs that were great, but they would set the damn appointment and then they were off and they wanted to go talk about it and celebrate. And it's like, dude, back on the phones, man. Let's keep going.
I had a gal that was in Al's office. She could not stand me because I'd get up and I'd be like, yes, I got another appointment. And I would tell her the story about it. And she's C personality. So she's sitting there typing and running up, and I would talk to her and she'd be like, she went to Al. She's like, this guy keeps talking to me about all of his appointments. And Al's like, I love that he's talking to you about the appointments. What the hell you want him to do? He's excited. That's his job. But I get it. I mean, and I'm DI. So, I mean, and it's like 90, 98 D, 91 or 92 I. So, I mean, I struggle with that.
Yeah, you can get right back on track. Whereas, you've got some of them, their D's a little bit lower and they can't get right back on track. They need that little subtle push.
Right. Or someone to tell them how awesome they are. Be like, oh, you're really awesome. Now go get back on the phone.
Get after it. Let's go. So, so no, I think that's fantastic. I love the consistency. I think that's the key. And I will definitely, I know what you're talking about with the young kids. Just looking for that they've got a strong support system in place, because if they do have the young kiddos, I mean, our kiddos get sick, and if they don't have that support, then they're going to be out. And so it could be another reason why, you could justify, hey, we got to get some more coverage. Maybe we need another part-time person to handle when they're out, when they're going to be sick. It's it's going to happen. So you just have to be prepared for it. You can't get upset about it. It's just part of the package if you make that hire, and just understand that that's what comes with it.
So true. And I think a lot of it too is that you really just have to manage the expectations through an agreement, because there's so many times where I've watched people hire an ISA and they're like, oh, they didn't hit my expectations. Well, what were your expectations? They tell me them. Okay, sounds reasonable. Where was it written down and agreed upon and signed by both parties that was the expectation and that was in the agreement? Oh, we didn't have one. Well, that's, that's the biggest baseline of this, is making sure that you're not managing, you're extracting emotions, you're removing that, and you're solely focused on what is that agreement? What is the agreement telling you? And what have you all agreed upon? And what makes the most sense based on that?
100%. So let's unpack the agreement a little bit. What are some of the key factors that we measure success with an ISA?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the biggest one, first off, is of course going to be number one. Compensation. What is compensation for you? What does that look like? When you come in, you are expected to be on the phone for X amount of hours every day. Let's call it 6 hours a day. You're expected to be on the phone for 6 hours a day. Out of those 6 hours, 2 of those I want to be 2-hour non-negotiable call blocks. So that means that they're blocking out 120 minutes, 2 hours of time to call expireds and for sale by owners. And you also, of course, you want to outline the lead types that they're calling. You also want to put in there if you have weekend expectations, which, by the way, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of agents make. Most agents, what's a weekend, right? You've seen those memes on Facebook. Oh, it's the weekend. I didn't even know. Well, I get it, because in most cases they're out showing homes then. But the ISA is not necessarily used to that. So there has to be, hey, there might be some weekend hours here and there. There might be some time outside in the evening that you'll have to take phone calls. That has to be in there. In addition to that, there needs to be a reasonable expectation for amount of days that they can, whatever happens, whether they miss some days, there's an emergency, whatever the case may be. Hey, in 90 days, you're on a probation period. You can only miss 1 day. If you miss more than 1 day, you're gone. And then there needs to be a write-up system. There needs to be a system where you're giving them you're basically giving them at least 3 opportunities to prove themselves, and then you're writing them up. So like, for examples for writing up would be if they missed a day of work. By the way, no call, no show in my company. If anyone ever no call, no shows, they're gone. Unless they're like put into the hospital. I've had 1 or 2 situations where I've said, okay, after looking at the documentation, I understand why you couldn't call, why you didn't let us know. But to me, it's a non-negotiable. They have to show up. They have to be there every day. That in my mind, that's at least 80% of the battle, is just showing up every day with the right mental attitude. So having that in there, and then of course also having in there an expectation that they're going to call for a certain amount of hours every single day, and that they are going to be open to feedback. They're going to be open to communication, and they're going to be open to being coachable, and they're going to remain humble through that coaching, because that in itself is key. And then last, but very, very important, you have to have your core values in there. If you don't have core values, you need to have core values. You got to have that, 100% accountability, 0 excuses is one of ours. That's in there. If they can't agree on those core values, then we don't hire them.
I love it. So definitely one of the KPIs, the measurements there is call time. What else from a number, a scoreboard, what else are you looking at that you want them to hit?
So, yeah, that's a really good question. So, within the first month, if someone's working 8 hours a day, we generally have, so like for appointments today, I'll just relay it back to us. We have a ramp up period of usually 60 to 90 days. With a 60 to 90 day ramp up period, and when somebody's in your office and they're full time, that ramp up period gets shrink down significantly. But if someone is in your office and they're making phone calls, within the first 30 days, they should be able to at least set up, I would say, an appointment every other day. So they should be getting at least, 6 to 10 appointments. Again, depending on your lead sources. So I would say that at a bare minimum, they should be after the ramp up period is usually when I start to measure. That's that 60 to 90 day mark. At that point, because if they have all of the non-negotiables, they're showing up every day, they're showing up on time, they're doing what they're supposed to do. I give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll keep them on for a little bit longer if they're open to growing and getting better. But I would say that if someone's calling expireds, for sale by owners, and circle dial leads, they should be setting about 20 face-to-face appointments per month in an 8-hour day. If they're calling buyers, 25 to 20, depending on how good the leads are, but at least 20. Because out of 20 appointments, let's just call it a 70% show up rate. Let's say 15 of them actually show up. Out of those 15, 7, maybe 8 of them will be something that the agent will actually want. And they're people that are reasonable, realistic. They have motivation. They want to sell a house, whatever the case may be. If they're not going through the seller counseling interview and asking the right questions, engaging that motivation, it's going to make it difficult. But those 7 to 8 appointments, out of those 7 or 8, the agent should convert about 50 to 60% of them, which in turn means they're going to get way more than a 3 to 4 times X return on investment. So that's really where that alignment has to be almost in a partnership type of a feel, opposed to it being a subservient role, which goes back to me saying before, when you're the leader, you work for everyone else. They don't necessarily just work for you.
No, it's great point. I think there's a bunch of the KPIs that you want to pay attention to. You want to try to maybe set some baseline standards that to be attainable based upon your experience yourself. And then, that evaluation process every 30, every 90 days, going back and reevaluating. And the thing is that you want them to really buy into why we're measuring so much, because what happens is that it helps us identify the constraints. So after their 90 days, it's like, hey, okay, so it looks like, we're making a substantial amount of our call times on point, our dials are on point, our contacts are on point, but we're not setting enough appointments. So let's focus on, over the next 30 days, let's focus on our contact to appointment ratio, and we're going to focus improving our skill set. We're going to autopsy, we're going to listen to calls, we're going to dissect. And instead of that shotgun approach, you're able to get really lasered in on what it is that we need to do to improve. And I think that's where a lot of leaders, sales leaders, especially real estate agents that have this position, have this ISA, or even their buyer's agents, they get tripped up because they're just shotgunning all this training. And it's like, no, where's the constraint? What is going to allow this process to flow? Where is the bottleneck? Where is the water hose? Where is it typed up, man? We gotta move that out. And if you're not tracking, then you can't see that constraint, and you can't put all the effort and energy that you need to. And we really learn from that principle by going through, it's Vern Harnish's #1 book recommendation, and it's called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. I'm sure there's a copy of it back here somewhere, but it's a must. I would listen to it. It's in a fable format, but it talks about identifying the constraint in your organization, and then what do you do to remove that constraint to allow the process to flow. And it's the same thing here. So I think that's set up. I think you nailed too on compensation, how important that is. And aligning compensation, because compensation drives behavior. So making sure that you've got the compensation to drive the behavior that you're looking for.
And I think, and I'm glad too that you hit the nail on the head, and I didn't even go into the numbers element, but if it's a skill problem, that if you're having 15 conversations and you're not getting one opportunity, whether it's a nurture, whether it's a face-to-face appointment, if out of those 15 conversations, if one of them equals a nurture, okay. Again, it's very based on specific lead sources. A great example, circle dial leads. Circle dial leads are rough. I mean, they take a lot of effort, a lot of time. And if you're just setting your ISA up with circle dial leads, good luck getting enough face-to-face appointments to keep yourself busy, because it is really, really difficult to do that. Now, we had a client that made $250,000 off of just circle dial leads, but he was also with us for 13, 14 months, and average sales price was about $750,000. So it helps. But my point is that when you when you look at the numbers for an expired or for sale by owners, if out of 15 conversations, there's not at least one opportunity, whether it's a nurture or an appointment, you have a skill problem. And that's where I would really start to hone in. And that kind of gives everybody at least a calculator and a measurement to say, okay, is this person successful? Well, they show up every day, they do their best, they're coachable, but they can't set a face-to-face appointment to save their lives, and they're having tons of conversations. So yeah, knowing those metrics, knowing those key performance indicators is a absolute must. So thanks for bringing it.
Absolutely, brother. Well, you know, Matt, man, I appreciate you jumping on. Amazing call. And, you know, absolutely thank you for adding value and being a true expert mentor and helping everybody out today. For all of you guys listening in, if you know, or listening to the recording with us on the Facebook group or into the Expert Mentors platform, you know, give Matt some love. And, you know, please share what was your, you know, the one big thing, your biggest takeaway. And if you guys have any questions or need anything, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Matt. Obviously, you can reach out to Al. Appreciate him jumping on here in the beginning. And Matt, appreciate you, brother. As always, fantastic.
Thanks, John. Have a great 4th.
You too, buddy. See ya.
See ya.